Testing one, two. Hello. Greetings from World Meteorological Organization in Geneva. We are the United Nations Specialized Agency on Weather, Climate and Water, and we are also the host agency of IPCC, which is providing scientific reports on the status of climate besides our reporting. And we are very much in charge of the global weather services, early warning services, also hydrological services, management of water resources. And because of climate change, we have started seeing growing amount of disasters and also the economic impacts of climate change. They are felt more and more. We just had a Sustainable Development Goal meeting of heads of the United Nations agencies a few days ago, and there we reviewed that the impacts of climate change is challenging many Sustainable Development Goals. The World Economic Forum, which meets here in Switzerland every January, just published their most recent report, and there they demonstrated which are the biggest risks for the global economy during the coming 10 years. And they were listing that the failure of climate change mitigation is number one, failure of climate adaptation is number two, and then the impact of extreme weather events is number three. So those are the biggest risks for the global economy for the coming 10 years. And you in Africa, you are feeling them much more. Your economies in many countries is based on agriculture, and agriculture is in many of your countries a big component of your economy. And the impacts of climate change, they're very much felt through agriculture. We have seen both flooding and drought challenges in Africa, and then we have started seeing a growing amount of cyclones hitting, for example, Madagascar, Mozambique, Zimbabwe and Malawi during recent few years, which is a new phenomenon. And in your part of the world, in Africa, also this population growth means that the demand of food, water resources and related issues are growing. And from our side, we can help you with this climate adaptation by investing in the early warning services through which you could minimize both the economic losses and human losses related to weather extremes, drought, flooding, storms, and heat waves. Secretary General Guterres has given us a mandate to coordinate the implementation plan of early warning services for all. We have only half of our 193 members have proper early warning services in place, and that means once a high impact weather event hits the countries, there's more economic losses and also more human losses. World Bank has demonstrated that the return of investments to early warning services is at least 10. If you invest $1 in meteorological and hydrological services, you are gaining at least $10. So it's also economically viable issue. And since you are the decision makers at your countries to decide where to allocate both government financing and sometimes also development partner financing, I would recommend you to invest in these early warning services. From our side, WMO, we are now having a program to improve the basic observing systems where we have major gaps in African countries, Caribbean, Pacific islands, and also to invest in the manpower capacity and IT systems so that you can deliver good services and be better prepared to face both disasters and impacts of climate change. And it's also important that we distribute these services and warnings to various audiences like safety authorities, to energy sector, health sector, to local farmers, and various means of transportation, air, marine, and road transportation users. And we have to train those users also to use those services. And we have been able to demonstrate that, for example, in some of the West African countries, once these new type of agricultural services have been taken into use, there has been a chance to enhance the agricultural productivity up to 30%. So this is also economically viable investment. With these words, thanks for the opportunity to address you, and I'm looking forward to closer cooperation with you once we implement these early warning services for all, and your support for your national meteorological and hydrological services, and also for this initiative is most welcome. So I would like to wish you most successful meeting, and thanks for the opportunity to address you. Thank you.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress. Recording stopped.
Good morning, honorable ministers, your excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. As we're about to start the meeting, I would like you to kindly take your seats so that we can get started. We're already running behind schedule. Thank you. I would also like to remind the honorable delegates that we have an evaluation questionnaire for this conference, which is available on the Paper Smart portal, which is accessible through the QR code that is displayed on the screen. So I kindly urge all of you to kindly ensure that you complete this questionnaire before you leave, since today is the last day of the conference. Thank you. I give the floor to the chair, Minister Henry, to start the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, George. Good morning to everyone. Can we all settle in? I want to take this opportunity to welcome you all for this session, and I want to thank you for putting in more time yesterday to ensure that we conclude on our heavy program which we had before us yesterday. Under today's agenda item, we will be considering the recommendations emanating from the meeting of the Committee of Experts and examine the draft resolutions before us for adoption. I will now call upon South Africa as the first chair of the Committee of Experts to take us through the recommendations from the Committee of Experts. May I take this opportunity to invite Mr. Themba Zulu to the floor to lead us through the process.
Chairperson, good morning, and thanks for giving me the floor to present the report of the chairperson of the Committee of Experts, Mr. Michael Wamai, who cannot be here to present the report. It's my pleasure to take the ministers through the report and the recommendations of the Committee of Experts. I would like to start to say, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. The Committee of Experts undertook its work from the 15th to the 17th of March 2023, and over the 3 days we considered various issues, including statutory matters of the Commission, as well as the theme of this year's conference. It is therefore my pleasure to present to you the recommendations that have emanated from the discussions for your consideration. And these recommendations are contained in the report of the Committee of Experts. The reference document, if I can allude to it, it's E/ECA/COE/41/22. And I take it that it has been read. I now start with the specific sections of the recommendation. I start with section 3 of the report, which reflects a set of recommendations made by the committee on issues discussed under the item entitled Overview of Recent Economic and Social Developments in Africa. And these recommendations are contained in paragraph 17 of the report. That is where they are detailed, I think on pages 4 and 5. And also the section 4 of the recommendations made by the committee on issues under the item entitled Assessment of Progress on Regional Integration in Africa. These recommendations are reflected in paragraph 20 of the report. On section 5, Chairperson, there's a set of recommendations made by the committee discussed under the item Presentation on the theme of the 55th session of the Commission. And these recommendations can be found in paragraph 24 of the report. With respect to section 6, the recommendations were made by the Committee on the Statutory Issues Specifically, these were recommendations on the report of the Executive Secretary on the activities of the Economic Commission for Africa. And these activities cover the period April 2022 to March this year. Also, there was a report on the follow-up to the resolutions of the Commission, to the Conference of the African Ministers of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. There was also a report on the work of the subsidiary body. This was in reference to the 8th session of the African Regional Forum on Sustainable Development. And these are contained in paragraph 32 of the report. Chair, still under section 6, with regards to the statutory issues, the committee also made a set of recommendations on the report of the work of a subsidiary body, the Committee on Statistics, on the work of its 8th session, and the proposed program plan and budget for 2024. And these detailed recommendations can be found in paragraph 38 of the report. Also, Chair, under section 6, still on the statutory issues, the committee had a set of recommendations, and these focused on the reports on the work of the subsidiary bodies, specifically the Committee on Economic Governance, and this was its first session. The reports that were considered on the sessions of the sub-regional intergovernmental committees of senior officials and experts, and the outcomes of the sub-regional policy dialogues on the theme of the session of the Commission. There was also consideration of the report on the work of the subsidiary body, the progress report on the work of the African Institute for Economic Development and Planning, in quotes, in brackets, sorry, that is IDEP, and finally, a report on the United Nations support for the African Union and its new Partnership for Africa's Development program. And all of these can be located in paragraphs 43 and 49 of the report, respectively. Chair, further under section 6, and still with respect to issues of the statutory issues, the following recommendations were made on the report on the implementation of the Vienna Program of Action for landlocked developing countries for the decade 2014 to 2024, and also a report on the progress on implementation of priority areas of the Doha Program of Action for the least developed countries in Africa. And paragraph 53 of the report spells out the detail thereof. On section 7, further recommendations were made, Chair, by the Committee on Issues relating to the date, the venue, and the theme of the 56th session of the Economic Commission for Africa. And paragraph 57 of the report of the experts contains the details of these recommendations. The Committee of Expert Chair has also considered 13 draft resolutions and recommended them for consideration and possible adoption by this Conference of Ministers. The resolutions are outlined in an annex to the report. And Chair, on behalf of the Chair of the Committee of Experts, I wish to also take this opportunity to express his gratitude to the members of the committee and of the Bureau, as well as the support of the ECA Secretariat for all the support and hard work. I submit, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, I suggest we first consider the recommendations made by the committee and then the draft resolutions. First, I invite the conference to consider recommendations made under section 3, paragraph 17 of the committee report. May I take it that the conference wishes to endorse the recommendations? I see no objection. It is so decided. I now invite the conference to consider recommendations reflected in section 7, paragraph 57. Sorry, I beg your pardon. I now invite the conference to consider recommendations reflected in section 3, paragraph 17, section 4, paragraph 20, section 5, paragraph 25, section 6, paragraph 38, and section 7, paragraph 50. This one. I now invite the conference to consider recommendations reflected in section 3, paragraph 17, section 4, paragraph 20, section 5, paragraph 24, and section 6, paragraph 38. I see no objection. It is so decided. I now invite the conference to consider recommendations reflected in section 7, paragraph 57 of the committee report. Is that Zimbabwe?
Namibia.
Namibia. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I raise my flag as the Dean of the Southern Region, just to indicate that under paragraph 57B, about the hosting of the next meeting by the Kingdom of Morocco, as the Southern region, we have also submitted Zimbabwe as the country to host the next meeting. And in this regard, Mr. Chairperson, I would like to ask that based on the two offers, that the Secretariat consult or hold consultations with the parties involved to find a solution on this and inform the member states accordingly. I thank you, Chairperson.
Egypt.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's just a logistical question because we do see that there are other recommendations before we go to section 7. So I guess there's paragraph 43. That was a recommendation. There's paragraph 49 was also a recommendation, and there's paragraph 53 that is also a recommendation. So are we not adopting these?
We have taken note and we will come back to them. Thank you. Zimbabwe. And also this.
Chair, thank you very much. And the purpose of my intervention is just to confirm Zimbabwe's preparedness on behalf of Southern Africa to host and the preparedness to actually be allowed the opportunity to do so. Thank you very much.
Which country is that? Morocco.
Thank you, Chairperson, for giving my delegation the floor. I would love also to reiterate the Morocco offer that has to host the next meeting, and I would love to confirm to inform that the conference that Morocco has sent a verbal note before the conference by this subject, and during the expert meeting we express our offer and no country objects, and yesterday also we confirm it. So just my intervention is just to confirm the Morocco offer to host the next meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Uganda.
Your Excellency, Chair, the two bidders have spoken, and I had time to have consultations with both the SADC region, including Zimbabwe and Morocco. I also had an opportunity to consult with my colleague, Ambassador Rushi, who is not in the capital here. And we've just spoken on phone less than 5 minutes back. He advises that to make the work smooth, we should allow time for consultation between the Bureau, the Bureau which will work with the Secretariat, and then the two member states or the regions that have put in their bids. Your Excellency, Chair, on behalf of the delegation of Uganda that sits in Addis Ababa, I would like to make a commitment that we are going to make sure that we hold this consultation as shall be guided by you at this point in time so that we make the work here smooth. Thank you, Your Excellency.
South Africa.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. South Africa takes the floor to support the delegation of Zimbabwe, that Southern region be given an opportunity to host the next session of ECA conference. For us, this is in line with the established practice that the region that chairs the session then host the event. So we take the floor to emphasize that we are in agreement with the submission that was made by the Dean of the Southern Region, and also the submission that was made by the Ambassador of Uganda, that in the event that we are having more than one candidates to host, then we can consider deferring the issue to the Bureau to engage in further consultations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. With the views coming from the audience, we still have resource too.
Thank you, Your
You
Excellency.
have the floor.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We would like to confirm that this dialogue has expired in the Southern region, and that after consideration of previous hosting by the Republic of Morocco, we concurred to propose the Republic of Zimbabwe as an alternative. And the procedures that have just been outlined on this matter, we thank your chairship that they will apply. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, with the views coming from the audience, I would like to suggest as follows: that the conference wishes to instruct the Bureau to undertake further consultations with Morocco and Zimbabwe regarding the respective offers to host the 56th session of the Commission. I see no objection, and it is so decided. I'll go after I've finished everything. We also have recommendations before us on the theme and dates of the 56th session, and also reflected in section 7, paragraph 57 of the committee report. May I take it that the conference wishes to make these recommendations on the theme and the dates of the 56th session of the Commission? I see no objection. It is so decided. We will now move to consider the draft resolutions for adoption. I will come back after. We will now move to consider the draft resolutions for adoption. The draft resolutions have benefited from the review of the ad hoc drafting committee established by the Committee of Experts and comprising member states representation from each sub-region. They have also been reviewed by our Committee of Experts on the course of their work and recommended the conference for adoption. There are 13 resolutions before us, and you can find them contained in the report of the Committee of Experts issued as E/CA/COE/4122 or through the paper smart photo. We shall proceed with the first draft resolution on enhancing energy security and ensuring a just energy transition in Africa. I see no objection. It is so decided. B is on the data and statistics. I see no objection. It is so decided. C is digital transformation for a secure, inclusive, and sustainable common future. I see no objection. It is so decided. D is accelerating sustainable development through regional integration and trade. I see no objection. It is so decided. E is accelerating food systems transformation in Africa. I see no objection. It is so decided. F is climate finance mobilization to accelerate a green recovery. I see no objection. It is so decided. G is advancing the Sustainable Debt Coalition initiative in Africa and beyond. I see no objection. It is so decided. H is Great Blue War Initiative. I see no objection. It is so decided. And I is the 2024 program plan and budget. I see no objection. It is so decided. K, African High-Level Working Group on the Global Financial Architecture. I see no objection. It is so decided. M is strengthening the cooperation between the Economic Commission for Africa and the African Union Commission to address development challenges in Africa. I see no objection. It is so decided. I now wish to invite the attention of the conference to the draft resolution on the African Institute for Economic Development and Planning. Understand that there is an oral statement by the Secretariat in connection with this draft resolution. May I take it that the conference wishes to adopt this draft resolution? I see no objection. It is so decided.
Monsieur le Président, pardon, c'est l'Algérie, c'est l'Algérie. Algeria.
Algeria, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, Algeria. I crave your indulgence. A language a suggestion to make on in the French text. the paragraph 2, it says commits all states, the member states of the Economic Commission to pay their contributions. Instead of French engage, I suggest that we align this to English and Arabic. So it's not commit, but it's just a language problem, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Is there any objection to Algeria's proposal? I see no objection. It is so decided. We also have before us draft resolution to be recommended the Economic and Social Council in connection with the draft resolution on the African Institute for Economic Development and Planning that we have just adopted, on reinforcing the role of the African Institute for Economic Development and Planning in assisting member states in strengthening development planning and improving their capacity to formulate and manage effective public sector policies for structural transformation and sustainable development. May I take it that the conference wishes to recommend this draft resolution to the Economic and Social Council, Tanzania?
Thank you very much, Excellency Chair. For us, we had a general recommendation as far as the resolution is concerned. If you can allow us, we can proceed, Chairperson.
Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Our concern is just to make the resolution smart, and they can take you for just an example for resolution number E on the draft resolution on the African High-Level Working Group on the global financial architecture, and they can take you to page number 2 out of 4.
Tanzania,
yes.
Would you like to draw the microphone closer to you?
Yeah, thank you very much. I draw the attention on the item number, resolution number E, on the item number 5. That is to call for special drawing right allocation to be considered in a rule-based analytical manner. It's continued that way. But for us, we propose that we write the recommendation in such a way that to make it smart, at least to indicate the responsible institution for implementation or follow-up. You can see for that recommendation number 5, all through up to 16, there is no responsible person. So Chairperson, we can do that one. That is a general recommendation with all other resolution. We submit, Chair.
Any objection? I see no objection, and the recommendation is going to be improved accordingly. May I take it that the conference wishes to recommend this draft resolution, the Economic and Social Council, as improved by Tanzania? I see no objection. It is so decided.
Section 6, paragraphs.
I now want to suggest that we go back to section 6, paragraph to adopt paragraph 38, 43, 49, and 53 of the report. May I take it? Ethiopia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving us this opportunity. We have a comment on paragraph 53 under B number 6, which talks about the report on the implementation of the Vienna Program of Action for Landlocked Developing Countries. Can you hear me?
Ethiopia, I can't hear you. Speak closer to the microphone.
Okay, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity. We have a comment on paragraph 53 under B number 6, which talks about the amendment of the report on the implementation of the Vienna Program of Action for Landlocked Developing Countries. We have an objection for the last sentence under this paragraph, which talks about avoiding projects that are still under negotiation among its members. So we strongly recommend to take out the last sentence of this paragraph. Thank you very much.
Egypt.
Thank you very much, Chair, for giving Egypt the floor. And
so the other one is objecting. Do you have any?
Chair, if we can grab your attention on this. When we are talking, and excuse me, can we move the camera a little bit? Chair, when we are talking about the work of the ECA, and we are going to support or promote certain projects, shouldn't these projects be finalized and agreed upon? Or can we have a promotion of projects that are still under negotiations? That's, I think, a very valid question. If we want to present or to remove parts of paragraphs, we have to present a reason for adding or for removing. But just requesting to remove, again, if you take a look at the paragraph, Chair, the paragraph is very general. It says that we need to avoid promoting any projects that are still under negotiations. Once they are done, once negotiations are over, then we do have the authority to promote them. When they are still under negotiations, it's not possible to promote a project that is still being discussed between member states. So I guess this is an agreed general provision. This is an agreed general principle. We did not specify any certain project in this paragraph. We're talking about a principle. Do we or do we not agree on the principle that we only promote projects once they are done? So in this regard, we insist on having that last sentence of the paragraph the way it is, because that's a general principle that all member states need to abide by. We go beyond politicization. We are calling for a general principle. Thank you, Chair.
Ethiopia, the argument by Egypt is persuasive. Do you have any strong justification to support your case?
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. We propose that Ethiopia doesn't have projects that is under negotiation. We are negotiating on the filling and operation of the dam or the project. So promoting, so ECA works for helping or promoting, helping projects that are part of SPIDA projects to enhance their capabilities. So we have to we have to delete this sentence in order to not to further complicate the relationship with member countries. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
I want to imagine the committee. Yes, Egypt.
Thank you very much, Chair. And speaking of negotiations or not, this, Chair, is a UN subcommittee, okay? This is a committee of the UN. And when we talk about a committee of the UN, Chair, it has to abide by the UN decisions. And if we take a look, Chair, at the presidential statement, and I need you to pay good attention to this, presidential statement of the UN Security Council, which is the highest body in the UN, in 15 September 2021, it says that the Security Council calls upon the three countries to take forward AU-led negotiation process in a constructive and cooperative manner. This means that there are negotiations. We have a presidential statement from the UN Security Council that says that a certain project is still under negotiation between certain member states. So if anybody here has a different idea that this is not a project that's still under negotiation, I guess they need to take that to the UN Security Council, not to this August body. Thank you very much.
What do others say on this issue? Do we have consensus or unanimity on this matter? Because I want us to move. I take it that there are no further objections, so we adopt. This being the case, it is so decided. Oh. We have decided the status quo stands as recommended by the committee of experts. Is that okay? It's now clear, so we move. We have completed our work on this agenda item. I want to suggest that we skip the break and straight away go to the closing session. No, before the closing session, we have to first consider the ministerial statement. We will now consider and adopt the ministerial declaration. The draft ministerial declaration is available through the Paper Smart portal like other conference documents. Are there any objections? If there is none, I declare that the ministerial statement be adopted. There is no objection. It is therefore decided. May I also take it that the conference wishes to authorize the rapporteur to prepare the report of this session in conformity with the practice of the Commission. I see no objection. It is so decided. We have now come to any other business. Is there any other business? Hearing none, I suggest Ghana.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I wanted us to consider paragraph 40, where I had in one of the programs suggested that we have these peer meetings and learning groups. So I would want to recommend to call upon the Economic Commission for Africa working with the AU to establish mechanisms such as peer learning groups for the sharing and exchange of experiences and knowledge between member states on sustainable and inclusive economic growth with a view to promote prosperity, employment, and significantly reduce poverty and inequality. In this regard, a toolkit on the preparation of sustainable and inclusive growth strategy could also be developed to guide member states. Mr. Chairman, this is on the back of the discussions yesterday, which revealed some very encouraging programs and policies that member countries had taken. And I thought it would be good for the ECA and AU to lead these peer group sharing, which will be important for our growth. Thank you, sir.
Eritrea.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning to all. Just I want to address in AOOB, in this function, there has been 2 days span in between the experts meeting and the ministerial segment. And maybe in the future, in all AU as well as ECA functions, most of the time we consider it as one delegation, as UNISAM delegation, and it creates a lot of problems for delegations just spending 2 days in between the experts and the ministerial. So in the future, I think we need to avoid the expertise segment should immediately be followed by ministerial segment, Your Excellency. Thank you very much.
Is there any other? No. There is that Uganda? Which one?
Your Excellency, Chair, that's Uganda.
Yes.
I thought we should respond to the proposal by Eritrea. I would concur with him. However, looking at the volume of work, maybe the 2 days would help the experts to wrap up. Probably we could look at other areas like logistics. But my thinking is we need some 1 or 2 days. Maybe we can reduce to 1 day in the between the meeting of the ministers and then the experts, so that they clean up the kind of jobs they could have done at their level. Thank you.
I think the issue is largely operational, and the Secretariat can look into it with a view of adopting the idea he has brought forward. Now, with the Ghana, Honorable Minister, would you like to consider submitting your proposal in writing so that it is considered at the next session?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. At this session, is that right?
Thank you. We shall incorporate in the next. Yes.
In this session.
In the we will incorporate your proposal in the revised ministerial statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Being no any further business, I suggest that we move to the closing session. Oh, there is I see Guinea. Yes. Guinea.
Yes. Allô? Bonjour, merci, Monsieur le Président. On s'excuse de revenir un peu en arrière.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. We're coming back to any other business. The resolutions have been validated, but I would like to get back to one of the items that was pointed out yesterday by the Minister regarding the agencies. Recommendations were made on surveillance and regulations, but yesterday in our communication we insisted on the fact that these agencies must integrate one of the aspects of the context for some of the countries. We noted these recommendations since 56th session in Dakar. There are some agencies that do not take the context. We know that in the recommendations we focused on regulation, surveillance, and also the possibility for recourse or appeal. We think that the context of African countries need to be taken into account because it's, I think, something that penalizes us when it comes to recommending for investment. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Can I suggest that we receive your issue in writing and then we work on it? We shall find where it best fits in the resolutions if we receive it in writing. Is that okay? Guinea, is that okay?
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci, Monsieur le Président, ça nous convient bien.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is perfectly okay with us. Thank you.
Thank you. So can we now move to the closing session? I see no objection, and it is so decided. I now call upon Mr. Antonio Pedro, the Acting Executive Secretary, to make his statement.
Good afternoon. I have 3 glasses here, so. All right. So, Your Excellency, Mr. Henry Moussa Zizi.
Excellence, Monsieur Henry Moussa Zizi,
Minister of State for Finance, Planning and Economic Development of the Republic of Uganda, Chair of the
de la
Bureau.
République de l'Ouganda, président du bureau de la session ministérielle, Monsieur le président du bureau de la conférence des ministres africains des finances, de la planification et du développement économique. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, gouverneurs de Banque centrale, Mesdames et Messieurs les invités, chers délégués, hauts responsables, membres de la presse, Mesdames et Messieurs. Ainsi que nous arrivons à la fin de délibération s'étant établie sur une semaine, je tiens à vous remercier d'avoir participé à cette réunion importante en dépit de vos horaires chargés. Nous avons une semaine de réunions très chargées qui portaient sur une question: comment lancer la reprise et porter la transformation de l'Afrique afin de réduire les inégalités et les vulnérabilités. Ceci nous a permis de nous concentrer sur les leviers de la croissance et d'identifier les priorités africaines essentielles, à savoir rehausser les compétences, l'industrialisation et la diversification économique, la mise en valeur des infrastructures, le commerce intra-africain, les solutions de financement innovants, la numérisation et les investissements dans la croissance verte. La richesse des informations et la diversité des avis et des expériences, des enseignements tirés et des engagements qui ont été pris indiquent très clairement que l'Afrique a les capacités de tracer sa propre voie vers la reprise économique et la transformation. Nous avons tiré des enseignements de la mise en œuvre de politiques favorisant les plus démunis en Égypte, les mesures anticonjoncturelles en Maurice, les réformes menées à bien en Éthiopie, la création d'une plaque tournante de la logistique et d'usines dans la filière pharmaceutique du Rwanda. Les solutions aux problèmes de l'Afrique se trouvent sur le continent. Nous avons également relevé des engagements pris par nos partenaires stratégiques et les parties prenantes clés de travailler étroitement avec la CEA afin d'aider les pays africains à résister aux tempêtes et à la succession de crises dont nous sommes témoins. Nous ne prenons pas à la légère ces engagements. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs les ministres, Mesdames et Messieurs, qu'il me soit permis de souligner quelques questions qui ont figuré de manière prépondérante dans nos délibérations et qui doivent être l'objet d'un suivi ainsi que l'on retourne dans nos organisations respectives. Premièrement, nous avons constaté avec les preuves qui nous ont été présentées que la convergence de crises, la COVID-19, la guerre interminable en Ukraine, la crise de la dette et les répercussions des changements climatiques ont qualifié ces crises imbriquées en Afrique. Par conséquent, surmonter ces défis et parfois ces crises qui se chevauchent exigera que les pays africains énoncent des stratégies pluridimensionnelles et ciblées et qui offrent plusieurs options en matière de politique. Deuxièmement, le nombre de personnes que l'on doit extirper de la pauvreté et d'une situation de vulnérabilité dans le continent est énorme. Et donc, les pays africains ont besoin de financements adéquats pour s'occuper des groupes vulnérables tout en réalisant les objectifs à long terme que ces États même se sont fixés.
Agriculture and food systems that are resilient to external shocks, and climate mitigation measures that reduce the impact of climate change. Thirdly, innovative and scalable solutions are imperative and must be developed for Africans by African countries. Investing in green sectors in Africa has significant benefits. Green and blue bonds, debt for climate investment swaps, and carbon credits offer unique opportunities to raise the resources necessary for development on the continent. Further, value addition in mining is yet another avenue for resource mobilization that has remained largely unexploited on the African continent. A just energy transition remains an imperative for the continent, and universal access to electricity and sustained industrialization are essential for Africa's economic transformation. Similarly, the implementation of the agreement establishing the African Continental Free Trade Area continues to be the blueprint for the African pro-poor economic recovery. Certainly, there is a need to expedite the implementation of CFTA, given its innumerable benefits to member states, including resilience to shocks. We acknowledge that the harmonization of the CFTA protocols with national laws, regulations, and practices, and the domestication of the national CFTA strategies are critical for speeding up its implementation. ECA is working towards streamlining the CFTA national strategies within the UN country team's programs of work as a first step towards mainstreaming the CFTA within the UN entities. Fourthly, on management of debt crisis on the continent, I wish to reiterate that as we continue to promote and scale up inward-looking the most domestic resource mobilization strategies, ECA acknowledges the critical role of multilateral lending institutions and has undertaken to advance the United Nations Secretary General call for an urgent need to reform the global financial architecture to level the playing field for both low and middle-income countries. Fifthly, we have heard you on the need for ECA to deepen its collaboration with the African Union Commission, its agencies, and other Pan-African institutions in strengthening Africa's agency and undertaking joint activities, projects, and programs for Africa's development priorities. Let me assure you that ECA is committed to strengthening the collaboration with the African Union Commission, particularly on supporting the continent with strategic perspective thinking and foresight studies on how the continent can achieve prosperity by 2030 and speed up the process of realizing the objectives of both Agendas 2063 and 2030 in Africa. Sixthly, we are reminded that evidence-based policy decisions are only possible if member states have access to quality data with smart indicators. In this respect, ECA is committed to deepening support to member states in improving their data and statistical systems. Working closely with the African Union, we'll continue building quality and harmonized SDG data ecosystems. Seventhly, we have taken note of the member states' suggestions to form peer learning groups to tap into the richness and diversity of innovations and successful policy interventions across the continent. ECA will be reaching out to your respective organizations with the modalities for taking these requests forward. Last but not least, as African countries pursue recovery from the above-mentioned shocks, ECA is committed to remaining a key partner in supporting member states, the African Union, regional economic communities, intergovernmental organizations, and other development partners to achieve Africa's structural transformation, social and economic recovery, and sustained growth. Guided by its medium-term program framework 2022-2025, which was endorsed at the 54th session of the Conference of African Ministers of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, ECA will support interventions around the pillars of trade, sustainable industrialization, economic diversification, and regional integration, macroeconomic policy for sustainable and inclusive development, poverty, gender, and social policy, private sector development, innovative financing, data, statistics, and digital transformation, and climate change and the green economy. Let me conclude by expressing my gratitude once again to all of you for enduring the long working hours like the ones yesterday to deliberate on issues that are of interest to our organization, and particularly to our esteemed client, the citizens of the African continent. We are particularly indebted to our host, the Ethiopian government, for the hospitality and for making the 55th meeting of the Conference of African Ministers of Finance, Planning and Economic Development a success. We have the mandate to deliver on our promise of shared prosperity to the people of Africa. We were reminded during the deliberations that sustainable solutions must be developed by Africa and that strengthened partnerships and collaboration are key in delivering to our people a transformed Africa. Let me end by challenging each one of us to rise to the occasion and ensure this century belongs to Africa. I thank you for your attention.
Excellencies, honorable ministers, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure that we have come to the closing of a series of engagements that have been part of the 55th session of the Conference of the African Ministers of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. From the outset, I wish to appreciate the Economic Commission for Africa for generously and ably hosting this conference of ministers. I'm glad that all arrangements have finally come out well. Excellencies, honorable ministers, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, this meeting highlighted the various challenges member states have faced during the COVID-19 era and the multiplicity of global shocks. While we note that substantial progress has been made in providing social safety nets and instituting policies to improve the livelihoods of the population, especially women and children, we acknowledge that the ability of our member states to effectively tackle poverty and inequality is being severely constrained given declining economic growth, narrowing fiscal space, rising debt, commodity shocks, and tightening global financial conditions. Without doubt, there is a high risk of missing the poverty and inequality targets set out in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and Agenda 2063. The Africa we want of the African Union. Excellencies, honorable ministers, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I would also want to commend the vibrant and strategic engagement and contributions of member states and other participants across all sessions of this meeting. I can confidently say that we have met all the objectives of the 55th Conference of Ministers. Member states have requested ECA to constantly provide them with technical support in designing policies and programs to address poverty. We were reminded that the empowerment of women and the youth is an essential ingredient to succeed and an imperative for our development. We also heard that we must focus on pursuing policies and strategies that will allow us to harness the demographic dividend and use it to the advantage of the continent. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to highlight some of the key resolutions that emerged from this meeting. There has been a call on member states to, number one, leverage the agreement establishing the African Continental Free Trade Area to strengthen their resilience to future economic shocks and maintain their sustainable growth. Number two, create wealth and increase domestic resource mobilization through prudent and targeted public spending, modernizing the tax system, and adopting homegrown fiscal and monetary reforms that attract small and medium-sized investors. Number three, explore other innovative financing mechanisms which have the potential to provide the much-needed development finance, but remain largely unexploited, like green financing. Number four, strengthen solidarity and collective effort among the African countries and ratify relevant resolutions to address insecurity and terrorism threats and ensure peace, security, and stability to underpin regional integration. Number five, scale up collective efforts to increase agricultural productivity, local manufacturing, investment in infrastructure, trade in services, and digital interconnectedness as important aspects of regional integration. Number six, revitalize efforts to implement infrastructure projects, including under the second program for infrastructure development in Africa and under the priority action for the period 2021 to 2030, support industrialization and the development of regional value chains. Number seven, invest in the development of digital infrastructure and create an environment that will encourage private sector innovation and attract the foreign and domestic capital needed to enhance industrialization, create jobs, and alleviate poverty. Number eight, ratify the protocol to the treaty establishing the African Economic Community relating to free movement of persons, right of residence, and right of establishment as an essential enabler of the implementation of the agreement establishing the African Continental Free Trade Area and regional integration. Number nine, pursue people-centered policies and a development path that is resilient, inclusive, and sustainable by prioritizing investments in the sectors that have high multiplier effects and reducing poverty and inequality such as health, education, and agriculture. Number 10, consider reforming the education sector to ensure that the skill set match current job opportunities of the market. And number 11, increase budgetary allocations to science, research, and technology to make Africa's dream on industrialization and economic diversification a reality. Excellencies, honorable ministers, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to renew the commitment of the Bureau and of the government of Uganda as the chair of the Bureau of the Conference of Ministers, and my personal commitment to work with ECA in implementing the resolutions we have made at this meeting. Allow me to express my thanks and deep gratitude to the experts, the Secretariat, the media, and other service providers for working toward a successful meeting of the Conference of Ministers. I want to commend the leadership of ECA in advocating for more liquidity for the continent. Finally, I want to invite all member states to consider implementing the recommendations made at this meeting. I thank you so much, and I declare the 55th conference adjourned. I have one announcement to make. We will have a press briefing now, and all other delegates who are not part of the press briefing can leave at leisure. Have we provided lunch, George?
Yes, distinguished delegates, yes, lunch is provided as usual in the same location as yesterday. You will be led to those locations by the protocol and ushers who are standing outside. But let me just add that lunch will not be ready until 1 p.m. because we are finishing ahead of schedule today. So lunch will be ready as from 1 p.m. In the meantime, you can either stay in the room for the press conference for those who wish to, or help yourself with tea and coffee, which is ready now. But lunch is 1 p.m. Thank you.
So may I call on all the journalists and reporters to take place in the front as delegates are leaving their seats. I would ask the journalists to come to the front and settle their cameras. Sophia, if we can ask all the journalists to come in the front. Hello? Oh, it is working. All right. I think the journalists are already here. So we can start the press conference as soon. Yeah. As soon as the chair is ready. And if I may ask the ushers to show delegates the way to the lobby. Ushers and protocol officers can show the delegates to the lobby. And so that we can have the room ready for the press conference, please. Thank you. Okay, all right. Yes. Can the communication team come in the front, please? Ernest, Nadia. I don't think they can hear me.
Use this, not this.
No, just the three of us. Thank you very much. Greetings, colleagues, journalists who are here physically present, and I believe there are some who are online. Welcome. We will now proceed to the press conference. So immediately I will give the floor to the guest, Pedro, and then the chair, just to say a few remarks, and then you can ask your questions. Thank you. Over to you, Pedro.
Thank you. So most of the things that I would want to say, I've already said through the my statements in the closing ceremony. But let me perhaps offer slightly different perspective, which is that we have a unique window of opportunity now to do things differently. Because the paradigms, I would say, are favorable this time around than it had been the case in the past. We have the opportunities in the form of the vast endowments that we have. Okay, yeah. So I was saying that we have a confluence of positive factors, which I would argue gives us a unique opportunity to do things differently on the continent. First, our endowments, natural resources, both in the form of minerals, as well as our forests, the sun, that can enable a transition towards green and sustainable economic transformation on the continent. Second, we have the people. We have the numbers that if we invest in building, in strengthening this human capital and make it work for Africa, then indeed it is possible to harness our natural resource for structural transformation. Then we've had a series of discussions on the continent that have provided the pathways to Africa's transformation, from the summits which have renewed the commitment to implementing the African Continental Free Trade Area that remains the Marshall Plan for the continent, that provides the catalyst for the structural transformation, that strengthens business fundamentals for investments on the continent. And then, of course, there are some basics that we need to invest, which is we have full control of those to ensure that the institutions on the continent create necessary ecosystems for our private sector, both domestic as well as foreign, to invest in Africa's transformation. So the policy coherence with the strategic goals of Agenda 2030 and 2063 is an important path forward. And we have the youth with its creative energy that needs to be harnessed for us to achieve our goals. Let me stop here, but we are getting out of this conference with renewed hope that we'll be able to make it this time around. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes. May I just invite the chair to say a few words before journalists ask the questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much, and a good afternoon to all of you members of the press. I am delighted to address you on the number of issues regarding the conference which we have just closed. To put it into context, we have had a rich and fruitful engagement with the experts for the last 1 week and with the ministers for the last 2 days on the theme of fostering recovery and transformation in Africa to reduce inequalities and vulnerabilities. This theme is extremely important for the continent. The confluence of shocks we're experiencing due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, the war in Ukraine, and the extreme weather patterns and the natural disasters that have eroded Africa's development gains must be tackled now so that we can meet the SDGs and the Agenda 2063 of the Africa we want. As member states, we are looking at a number of millions of Africans facing poverty and 18 million Africans that are now at risk of falling into poverty. And we are also seeing levels of inequalities that we never witnessed before. We are in agreement that we must act now, and we must do so together as ministers, as stakeholders at all levels. Reducing inequalities and vulnerabilities will require all hands on the deck. We have agreed on some key issues, like I stated in my closing statement, but let me quickly go through the most important ones. One is the African Continental Free Trade Area is very important, but we must move very fast on trading with each other so that we can open up opportunities for small and medium-sized traders, including women and the young entrepreneurs. Two, we also need to create jobs. We can unlock green jobs and green finance as we tackle climate change and extreme weather patterns. Three, we must also invest in data so that we can make real-time informed decisions. And four, the global financial architecture needs to work for Africa to truly unlock the financing we need to meet the needs of the vulnerable citizens. Over the next year, my hope as a Bureau Chair is to work closely with my fellow Bureau members, our member states, and with the ECA as we hold ourselves accountable to the next year. We can see meaningful progress and change. I want to thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. So we will now proceed to the questions. I see one, okay, we will do three at a time. So one gentleman here, then two gentlemen there, and then we will come on this side. And I count on my colleagues to tell me if there's any journalists online as well. So let us start with you, sir. Thank you.
I'll ask my question in French if Mr. Pedro allows me to.
If I may just ask you to say your name or the publications that you're from. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Je m'appelle Idriss Linge, rédacteur
My
en
name
chef.
is Idriss, the main editor of our paper, which is based in Geneva, and we deal with the financial matters in Africa, and we thank the ECA for their kind invitation to participate. I was not able to follow all the recommendations, but I followed the issue about innovations, but against poverty. Something that happened in 2022 is the decision of the African group to make a resolution to discuss the international tax architecture. My direct question is the ECA accompanying African countries in this process? And if yes, at what level of discussions are we, since we are coming very close to the first anniversary of this resolution that was adopted? I thank you very much. Thank you very much. We'll now go to the next two. We'll take three questions at a time.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Joseph Gada.
Thank you very much. My name is Joseph Gada from Togo, and I'm also a member of the network of journalists in West Africa. My question is addressed to the Executive Secretary. In your comments at the ministerial roundtable, you announced that that Africa will join G20. This is very good news because Africa is a significant part of the population of this world. My question is on the significance of this and when it's going to be implemented. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I was going to ask my question in French. My name is Roger Banda. I'm from Cameroon. I work for the newspaper called Integration. I would like to thank the ECA for their kind invitation. My question is focused on the rural areas, the rural world. In this session, we're speaking about focusing on reducing vulnerability and inequalities. We didn't hear much mention of the rural areas. However, we know that it's the rural areas that produce, it's the rural areas that are the poorest, it's the rural areas that are most vulnerable when the national budget does not meet their social, education, and health needs, among others. Now, when you're speaking about social transformation, reducing inequalities and vulnerabilities, we heard a lot about pharmacies, about electric batteries, and so on. But hasn't the time come to see the rural areas as the engine, especially the women? Can we perhaps have products like cassava, maize, and so on be implemented along the lines of value chain transformation and processing, and this to develop Africa profoundly? Thank you very much. I'll give the floor to the Executive Secretary and the Chairman to answer these questions. Thank you.
To be more precise, I will speak in English. Let me start with the last question. Absolutely, we should not leave anyone behind. At the same time, it's important to take into consideration evolving dynamics. And this is that the rate of urbanization on the continent is accelerating significantly. And that in a couple of years' time, we'll have more people living in urban settlements than in the rural world. Having said that, it is absolutely critical that in designing our strategies, we take into consideration the entirety of our population. That's why at the level of ECA, we are advocating for the deployment of instruments that can help us to localize better where the opportunities are, where the challenges are. We are deploying increasingly spatial planning and analysis as a means to achieving that. You would recall, Roger, that in Central Africa, we have worked with local entities to understand where the socio-economic opportunities are located in Central Africa by using, sorry for these jargons and technicalities, but for using GIS-enabled hotspot analysis of economic opportunities, which combine an identification of where the socio-economic indicators, where the poor are located, where the educated are located, which are the grades of each and every one of those people in terms of education levels, also with the biophysical data. So where's the water? Where the Arab land? What are the ecological zones, agroecological zones, and so on and so forth. So that mapping exercise enables, for example, for us, when we talk about decentralization, we talk it as a process that is not underpinned by the transfer of resources from the capitals to the periphery, but instead by first understanding what is available at that particular setting, including at the rural level. So when we were talking here, therefore, about improving or modernizing our data and statistics systems, we're equally referring to, indeed, the importance of spatial planning. So absolutely critical. Indeed, many of our largest opportunities are in the rural world. We made reference a couple of times during this conference on the importance of carbon credit markets. Forests are in the rural world, and forests in the Congo Basin, for example, could be at the center of our effort to monetize the ecological services that are associated with it. It will be in the center of making sure that nature conservation generates benefits that are tangible to local communities, so that they will be the agents of conservation and not and moving therefore from a top-down government-led process to one where the communities themselves will be interested parties, because nature conservation will generate incomes that can be plowed back into improving their sustainable livelihoods. So to say, fully in agreement with you, and indeed we need to invest more in generating those data sets, that information that will enable the conversation to become more tangible and evidence-based. But we need, again, as I said, to be mindful of other dynamics which are associated with increasing urbanization on the continent. So when we are talking of clusters development, we are looking at ecosystem that links urban settlements with the rural world as part of the same continuum. And this is where, again, improving in the design of our roads, so that agriculture activity, for example, the rural world is linked with the market opportunities that are offered by the urban settlements. So planning at that level, detailed planning, is absolutely critical. Now, the G20 seat is absolutely, again, important for Africa. How we use it, it is another conversation, and an important one. And this is where all of the interested parties today are talking about strengthening Africa's agency. And strengthening Africa's agency has to be predicated on first understanding what is our comparative or competitive advantage. What is it that we take to the G20, and how we bargain for more on the basis of those comparative advantages. For example, we also said during this conference that most of the global transitions, let's talk about energy transitions, let's talk about the electrification of transport systems, let's talk about demographic dynamics, where is, for example, the most youthful labor in the world is in Africa. So those are all assets that need to be part of the conversation during G20 meetings, so that we take and make the most out of our resources. Building common voices, African voices, it's not one voice, is important. This voice, again, needs to be evidence-based. So institutions like ours can contribute with relevant studies, assessments of the opportunities, and then feed up into the machinery that leads or that takes us to G20 conversations. As you know, the seat will be represented by the chair, the incumbent chair of the African Union, with support of the African Union Commission through the chairperson. The call, therefore, that was made here increasingly, that we as ECA should work closely with the African Union Commission and with the African Union organs, it's important. And supporting this G20 seat will be one of the things that we as the ECA will undertake to doing it consistently and coherently. Now, the global financial architecture, or the reform of the global financial architecture, and this was the question by Burundi, if I'm not mistaken, is part of the discussions that will be featured certainly during these G20 meetings. And G20 is not just a meeting, there's a process, the supporting process, the platforms that inform the proceedings of the G20. So we as ECA, you'd recall, were amongst some of the first institutions in Africa that have identified that the financing for Africa's transformation to attain the SDGs, to attain Agenda 2063 were not sufficient enough. And during COVID-19, that became even more evident. And through the platforms that we created, the meetings that we sort of facilitated, we called for a couple of things: the suspension of debt, the establishment of facilities like the Liquidity Sustainability Facility, the channeling of the special drawing rights to expand Africa's liquidity, and many other financing-related conversations that I would say culminate in this call for the reform of the global financial architecture. So we were at the center of these conversations, together, of course, with our ministers of finance in Africa. And we've undertook to continue this collaboration in close consultation with the African Union Commission and its organs. And the working breakfast that we organized yesterday is part of that commitment to continue the collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, I think we have the woman who is sitting there, and then the gentleman. Thank you. And we will come back to you, sir.
Thank you very much. I am Princess Gibson from the Sierra Leone Broadcasting Corporation. The last 1 week has seen a lot of conversations around economic delivery in diverse areas, including agriculture, trade, infrastructure, but I'm more concerned around health financing, especially in the area of maternal health. Mr. Acting Executive Secretary, our indices are not good on maternal mortality. And for me, that is one of the people-centered policies. Is that on the agenda of ECA?
Thank you very much. We'll take the second question and then the third from Christabel here. Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Brian Ngugi from the Standard Media Group in Nairobi, Kenya. Regarding your sustained call for the reform of the global financial architecture, do you have specific recommendations on how the African special drawing rights can be, the allocations can be increased, and do you have specific amounts that you are recommending? Thanks.
Thank you. Christabel?
Yeah, my question is to the chair in regards to the issue of many people falling into poverty. What advice will you give governments?
You can introduce yourself, please.
Oh, my name is Christabel Ligami. I'm a journalist from Kenya.
Repeat your question.
My question is to the chair in regards to the issue of many people falling into poverty in Africa. what will be your advice to governments to address the issue of poverty to ensure that we meet the sustainable development goals?
If I may ask the chair to answer this question first, and then we will come to the ES. Chair, over to you.
Thank you very much. And this question clearly speaks to the fundamental challenge we face as Africa. In Uganda, for example, to address this challenge, we have what we call the social economic transformation agenda, whereby I had someone in the audience ask about the plans we have for the rural areas, especially for the youth, women, and others, because these are the most vulnerable people. So we think we should now redirect our efforts to programs that address the challenges our last mile people face. They are into poverty for two main reasons. One is the attitude, and number two is lack of capacity to transit from poverty in terms of having capital requirements. So what we think we should do as Africa is we need to begin looking at interventions that can bring, for example, these last mile people into the money economy. Some of these people spend a year without touching money at all. Someone works to just eat and sleep. There is nothing you take to the market for money. And we think if we are to deal with the challenge of poverty and the consequences poverty brings, we must bring as many people as possible into the money economy so that they are able to address some of these challenges by themselves. I don't think there is any country which is going to buy clothes for its citizenry. You can think of other aspects which the country cannot do for you. So, in order to make these people also become meaningful citizens, governments must come up with deliberate programs which empower them to also come to the money economy. And henceforth, we shall have dealt with the challenge of poverty, shall have dealt with the challenge of disease, and if interventions are related to agricultural production, we shall have dealt with the problem of hunger, name it. And I would like to invite our colleagues to begin thinking about this social economic transformation agenda, because we are convinced that the livelihoods of our people can be improved as long as the last mile people are all involved into activities that bring money to their households. I thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for highlighting the actions. If I may now invite the ES to speak to the question on maternal health and the question on SDRs from Kenya. Thank you. And then we will take one last round. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Poverty has different dimensions, and health is one of the dimensions of poverty. When we're discussing vulnerabilities and inequalities, these are more evident in the health sector. One of the major problems, of course, with COVID was, in addition to the financial impacts that it created in our economies because of all of those shocks, supply, disruption, trade routes, and so on, was our inability to respond to the crisis because of our limited fiscal space. And the numbers of poor people, as we've described during this conference, is increasing. And with that, it means that those will have lesser access to health services, which in any case, because of our situation, are not available everywhere. So it is part and parcel of our preoccupation of ECA. We have a gender, poverty, and social policy division, whose responsibility is to look at those issues from in an integrated manner, because indeed your poverty is manifested in many different ways. In your inability to access food, in your inability to access education services, in your inability to address health services. They're part and parcel of the same structural problem. So we are looking at that. Now, addressing those problems, again, require structural interventions, require better profiling of where the poor are. So with relevant data and statistics, disaggregated data, spatial data, as I've mentioned earlier, we need to be able to localize where the poor are, where the ones that don't have access to services, including access to services, are, so that then we have better targeted interventions. You've heard us talking about the social state and how some of our member states, notwithstanding the restrictive fiscal space they have, they are nevertheless channeling some of the meager resources that they have to that last mile segment of our population that the Honorable Minister mentioned here. So it's important that we generate those disaggregated data. It's important that we understand where they are located so that then our governments can target their interventions accordingly. So our work in the African Center for Statistics, as well as our work through the Gender, Poverty and Social Policy Division, are meant to understand those dynamics. So we are working on that. Now, on the SDRs, indeed, there is an issue there in terms of access, the volumes, and the simplification of the procedures that would enable our member states to have access to special drawing rights. One of the messages that we conveyed loud and clear, that the rich countries are not using their SDRs. And therefore, we've called for those SDRs to be reallocated to those that need, namely African member states. Then we've equally identified that there are bottlenecks in the offer that needed to be addressed, and that the systems need to be simplified. That's everything that we are putting forward in our efforts to reform the global financial architecture. So that's the call. There are processes, there are tools, there are instruments that we need to master better so that indeed our member states can utilize it. And it's part of the so-called conversation on blended finance. It's not a panacea, as we said several times, to have access to these SDRs. We've increasingly said that we also need to focus at home. The domestic resource mobilization is absolutely critical. We have dormant capital in all sorts of platforms, in our pension funds, in our money from the diaspora and so on, that are not being channeled for structured transformation. Most of it goes to consumption and some of it goes to real estate, which is important. But our argument is that if we create special purpose vehicles that will enable that money to go and fund structural investments like infrastructure, like the development of education and health systems, then we will be having a much larger multiplier effects. So that's where we are insisting in looking at financing as part of a much larger issue, not only, of course, looking and for resources outside of the continent, but equally looking internally. Thank you.
Thank you. May I see if the chair would like to add anything on this issue? Okay. We will take the last round. Sorry, because of the cameras, I can't really see. So gentlemen here and two, and that will be it. I thank the interpreters for being available. So we will have to close after this round. Thank you. So first person here. Yes.
Honorable Chair, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. This is Fukadu from NBC Ethiopia. How are you? In Ethiopia, not only Ethiopia, the whole Africans, the paradox of poverty is not ending for the last. I think you hear me. Okay. Honorable Chair, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. This is Fukadu from NBC Ethiopia. How are you? In Ethiopia, not only Ethiopia, the whole African countries. It is the paradox of poverty is not ending for the last. Means that it's still challenging for the whole African. As an ECA, United Nations ECA, which one build or create a good opportunity for regarding for the strong broadcasting medias, for broadcasting for African countries regarding on strong medias. How casting for African countries, because Africa have their own resources, their own culture, their own historical histories. So based on this case, so many benefits for Africans and it's a huge opportunity to create Africans. That means build up for a strong media. It's a whole Africans, not only Ethiopia, not only such like different African countries. As I say, what do you build? What do you create? A good opportunity like this, depending on use, depending on different. It is energetic uses, energetic, powerful young people in our country, on our the whole Africans. So as I say, what do you create or build this like opportunity? Thank you very much.
Okay, if I may just, so if I understand your question correctly, you're asking what ECA is doing for the youth, for creating positive dividends in the continent. Okay, thank you. The next question was, I think over here. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much. And I'm Musandu, Business Time newspaper from Zimbabwe. My first question is directed to the chair. Two countries have raised their hands. They want to host COP24. Where do we go from here, and how soon do you announce the host? And then the next question is directed to the ES. You have mentioned that there's 82 billion sitting somewhere, which we can be unlocked from carbon credits. Which countries are you working with so that they get the certification? Thank you.
Thank you. I think this will be the two. Chair, if you may take the first question about the chair or the hosting of the next conference. Thank you.
I think the resolution on the next country to host was very clear. We deferred this to further consultations, and the Bureau will look into the matter and make an appropriate decision, which shall be announced at an appropriate date. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Okay, so Ethiopia, you've talked about the paradox of poverty. I let me just say what one of our major problems in Africa is the so-called paradox of plenty. And then I'll land at your question particularly. So the paradox of plenty is indeed one of the issues that we are confronted with. And let's pick natural resources, mineral resources for that matter. DRC produces 70% of the global cobalt in the world. Its GDP is $51 billion or so. Tesla, the producer of electric vehicles, market valuation was $1.3 trillion in January 2021 or 2022. And of course, I think you'd say that Tesla is not just the batteries that go there. But I just wanted to pick those two cases to illustrate what the journey is in Africa, which is to go from exporting raw materials to adding value to our raw materials, so that we do not content ourselves in celebrating the fact that we have 70% of cobalt, or that we have some of the largest unexplored reserves of X, Y, and Z. So, and this is why we are working together with a couple of countries on the continent, and the African Union Commission also has their commodity strategy, which is meant to ensuring that we add value to our raw materials, to our natural resources. And with that, when you export raw materials, you are exporting jobs, and we have to create about 16, 17, or 19 million jobs a year for the youth that you've mentioned. The opportunities to do that is if we add value, if we promote resource-driven industrialization, which is one of the things that came out of the AU summit, extraordinary summit on sustainable industrialization and economic diversification, which was held in November last year in Niamey in Niger. So if we do that consistently, if we understand where do we have our comparative advantages and utilize that to promote that resource-driven industrialization, then we hopefully then move from this paradox of plenty to much, much better and sustained growth on the continent. Now, I made reference on the need for us to change the narratives on the continent. And the media, our media, you that represent the media here, has a role to play in changing the narratives. We will provide certainly the facts, the figures, the numbers, the data, and then with your help, we'll be able to, for example, convey a message that Africa is a continent of opportunity, that there are things that we need to address, but is a continent of opportunity. And the opportunity lies on, among other things, the fact that we have the youthful population. With the rest of the world aging, it could perhaps be Africa, if we do the right investments, that we will have a credible care economy that could take care of the aging world and the rest of the world. Currently, as you know, some of our doctors and nurses are taken to other shores with a view to helping those that are aging. that could be win-win partnerships in which we train enough people for Africa as well as enough people for the rest of the world. So those are the kinds of the narratives that the media has to help us convey and magnify, so that, again, going back to the conversation on the G20, that seat is used for us to negotiate migration and to negotiate the realization of demographic dividends, and instead of what we see today. And I don't want to go deep into that. Now, the last question was on
which countries are we working on? I think this was Zimbabwe.
No.
I think it was Zimbabwe who asked.
Zimbabwe, I think the minister has answered.
Yeah. But it was, yes, you can repeat your question. I think it was what question?
Yeah, the question is to do with 82 billion, which can be unlocked from carbon credits.
Okay, certainly. Yeah, so that's the number we used when we organized the African Business Forum on making carbon credit work for Africa. We did say then that if we succeed to sell a ton of CO2 that is sequestrated at $120, that Africa would be able to generate $82 billion a year. To arrive there, of course, there are a couple of things, the fundamentals that we need to invest in. And during the forum, we discussed that. I mean, the credibility of our offer and so on and so forth. Now, on your question, we committed that all of the countries that participated were represented through their ministers and virtually by their respective presidents: Malawi, Zimbabwe, Cape Verde, Mozambique, Seychelles, and Mauritius will be some of the countries where we would be immediately working with. We've also indicated during the same forum that we are working already with the Congo Basin Commission into developing that pipeline of carbon credit opportunities that is credible and that could therefore fetch, hopefully, much better prices. We are also looking at the Ocean Basin Commissions as part of the deployment of our operationalization of our Great Blue Initiative, to working with those countries in translating their efforts to promote nature conservation into carbon credit markets. You'll recall, I'm sure, what we said, that we are trying to combine climate action, nature conservation, the developing sustainable livelihoods as the same sort of offer. And if we do that, then the co-benefits will be much higher. And through that process, then perhaps we can get much higher prices. We are also looking at the Sahel Climate Commission to combine, in that particular case, the deployment of solar energy with opening up opportunities in the livestock and other sectors associated, again, with peace and security as part of the United Nations integrated strategy for the Sahel, and our effort to, again, generating more core benefits. And some of the countries that we are targeting there are Niger. We were in Niger for the summit. We are in Niger for the African Regional Forum on Sustainable Development, and we had conversation with the government in that direction. So there are a couple of countries. Last piece of information which I've heard today is that the African Carbon Market Initiative, ACMI, that is a platform that is sort of helping Africa to generate those credible pipeline of carbon credit opportunities, has 16 countries in their radar to start helping them developing those credible instruments. Our objective, of course, is to cover the entire continent, but we go step by step. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we have two just questions online, so I don't want to exclude the journalists who are online. The first one has been a written question from a journalist from Rwanda, and the question is to you, yes. How will the AfCFTA Adjustment Fund, now headquartered in Rwanda, be a game changer as far as accelerated implementation of the AfCFTA? That's the first one. And then I think we have Aline, who is a journalist from Benin, who would like to intervene online. So if she can take the floor. Thank you. Can our colleagues, can she take the floor, Ernest?
Oui.
Yes, Aline, you can go ahead. Is she online?
Est-ce que vous
Okay.
me...
Oui, vous entend. Allez-y.
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead. Madame Aline, please go ahead. Great. Maybe the technology doesn't allow her to speak.
En attendant, si vous pouvez.
Let's go to FCFTA. Maybe you can write your question and address it to us on chat. The colleagues will give it to me. Thank you.
First, I would like really to congratulate the Secretariat, the AFCFTA Secretariat and Afreximbank for their continued efforts to addressing some of the bottlenecks to the operationalization of CFTA. And one of the important conversations on the CFTA is the winners and losers, and what is it that needs to be done to make sure that at the end everyone will benefit from the opportunity that the AFCFTA represents. So particularly smaller countries, we've heard, for example, the Minister of Finance of the Central African Republic on how important the customs duties are for their fiscus. And once you start operating under the CFTA trade regime, with the liberalization of the goods, the trade in goods, later I will have a trade in services as well, you will lose that revenue stream. And the adjustment fund, among other things, is really meant to compensate for that. And it also has a line that will help those countries to reduce their dependence, therefore, from those customs duties. So that's one important part of the agenda moving forward. The rest, I mean, as I said earlier, is about making sure that those national CFTA strategies are implemented. And part of the national CFTA strategies is informed by the identification of those 10% list of sensitive products that will still benefit from protection. And one of our arguments at that 10% list of products should be the basis on your industrialization strategies, the basis for your industrialization strategies. Again, making sure that those products can go up in the value chains, can improve in quality, so that the Made in Africa agenda becomes a reality. So we are looking at that as part, again, of the things that we need to do so that countries don't lose from liberalizing their economies. The development of regional value chains is, again, part of it. Sorry, I think I'm speaking too much. Yeah. Thank you, Nita. So we've discussed here the importance of identifying what to be the basis on which countries would specialize. The conversation on what are those comparative advantage, what is the national value proposition, what are the growth diagnostic studies, those are the plethora of issues that we need to really focus on if we want to make the CFTA work for Africa. The Adjustment Fund is just one of those interventions that are required. In the same meeting here, we've discussed the importance of payment systems. Here again, Afreximbank is looking at that and how we can trade using our own currency. I think you've heard during the roundtable on CFTA Treasure talking about the initiative that they're also developing with a view to, in this particular case, supporting small and medium enterprises also to trade. So to cut this long story short, we need to look at the entirety of the things that we need to do to move from A to B, to make the CFTA work. And the Adjustment Fund is just one of those. We've talked, for example, of the importance of deploying or undertaking more of the trade decision support modeling. The trade decision support modeling, we've done it for Cameroon, would identify where within Africa, within the CFTA, are your best export destinations. And with that, then you can align your investments in infrastructure with that opportunity. So this is what ECA and other entities, the institutional partners of the CFTA, will be doing consistently so that indeed no one loses in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, yes. And the last question from Madame Aline. Elle a envoyé sa question. Donc, la question est pour le secrétaire exécutif. Dans la présentation.
The question to the Secretary. In the presentation of Madame Eunice Kamwendo, we saw that a certain number of mechanisms have been selected and chosen in Africa and West Africa to support the integration of Vision 2025 of ECOWAS and tourism of countries like Benin, my country. We want to know what has been planned in concrete terms. This is the journalist from Benin. Thank you.
Sorry, I was not at that particular time when that issue was discussed, but overall, the blue economy, if there was a reference to the blue economy, the blue economy in general is part of our priority areas of focus. When I made reference, for example, to the Great Blue Wall Initiative, and I indicated that it includes not only nature conservation, the protection of mangroves and so on, but also as part of the sustainable livelihoods pillar, the acceleration or operationalization of blue economy strategies. So we work on that just for the sake of information. We supported IGAD to formulate the IGAD master plan for tourism development, which provides the blueprint for mainstreaming tourism as part of our economic diversification strategies. As we start to operationalize the trade in services, indeed, in many countries, tourism is going to be a game changer, notwithstanding its vulnerabilities. So in the IGAD Sustainable Tourism Master Plan, we've argued quite strongly that one of the pathways to reducing the vulnerabilities in the tourism sector is to promote tourism by Africans. And COVID-19 has revealed that when travel routes became disrupted, indeed the tourism sector in many of our countries became a problem. And the Minister of Mauritius just provided, Minister of Finance, the Governor of the Central Bank of Mauritius, shared with us some of the things that they have done to rescue the tourism sector. So we have a strategy, we have the frameworks, we supported the African Union in developing the blue economy strategy for Africa, for which, in which, of course, tourism development is part of it. We are working on that. in many of our countries. We've supporting countries to develop what we call the tourism satellite accounts, which are again a part of those data systems that are important. So to call the attention of ministers of finance and other entities about the importance of the tourism sector and its contribution to GDP. Because if the ministers of finance recognize that the tourism sector is, for example, the main sector in their respective economy, then they will be investing on some of those fundamentals, infrastructure, the security, the health and sanitary factors that make a tourism destination a preferred investment destination. It's not just about the product itself. There are all sorts of ecosystems, and tourism is one of those very, very sensitive sectors in which, for example, if people or your tourists believe that that area is not safe, the safety is not guaranteed, and safety health-wise and on many other forms, then they will not come back there. So I would invite you, Eileen, to look at our website, look at the IGAD Sustained Tourism Master Plan, look at the toolkits that we developed to facilitate tourism development, tourism satellite accounts, and some of the strategies that we developed to say that Togo, if they approach, or Benin, if they approach us through our office for West Africa, you'll be very well served. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, that was the last question. I would like to thank all the journalists who have participated and engaged with us. I would like to thank the chair and the ES for participating in this press conference. And as we have said, we really value the partnership with you, because you do not only relay, but you are here as part and parcel of changing the narrative going forward for the continent, for Africa. So thank you very much. If there are any questions that were not answered or you did not have an opportunity, or even Aline, please do send the communication team the questions, and we will direct the questions to the respective directors ou bien les directeurs des bureaux sous-régionaux. Merci beaucoup et bon appétit.
Thank you very much and bon appétit.